Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. On today's video I will be talking about episode 4 of Last One Standing. Before I continue, link below are some surveys that I made. There's one where you can vote for survivalists you would like to see on a Last One Standing challenge who haven't been on the previous 2 seasons. And there is a Largados y Pelados XL survey where survivalists from Largados y Pelados are all listed and you can vote for those who you would like to see return. Now, moving on to the episode, we see Gary and Danny getting some leaves for food. And they are sad that Lindsay is gone, but they gotta survive and they know it's a competition. And Gary finds a Mopani beehive and he is able to secure honey and larva for himself and honey for Danny. And they hide it from the rest of the group and they have to be really sneaky about it because later in the episode, Patrick and Jeff have to stay the night at their boma due to baboons, and they successfully hide it. There's also a second hive of Mopani bees found by Patrick, and he decides to gather the group together and everyone feasts on the spoils of Mopani bee honey. And we get some talking heads from Trish throughout the episode of Dan being sneaky and greedy, where she's saying how he wants to get all the honey for himself, and we also get a talking head from Jeff saying that Dan has sticky fingers as well. But, you know, we need this narrative that he has sticky fingers and he's being greedy, but we're only hearing this from Trish and Jeff, who Dan has said he trusted the least, and Jeff and Trish have also had problems with him. So it's very interesting to see this dynamic going on, and like, is it production kind of stirring the pot a little bit, or is this true feelings? I don't know. And I also would like to say, I think Jeff and Patrick aren't the bitter rivals that we were shown, because seeing their interactions, they don't seem awkward or antagonistic towards each other, even though during their interviews, I think it's Jeff's fault. He wasn't able to build a trap. I think it's Patrick's fault. He wasn't able to build a trap. And then, you know, when you see them getting third place in the tree chopping challenge, they give each other a genuine hug. So I think they're really good buddies. And also, Kate made a post talking about how they were buddies and stuff like that. So I don't think they're the rivals that we think they are. I think they're buddies and they got along better than what we were shown. Anyway, going back to the episode, the survivalists are given notes saying on day 15 they are moving to zone 2, and it seems there are less migrations this season, so that's good. And since there are 45 days in this challenge, most likely on day 30 they're going to move to the third and final zone, so it's not too bad. And also it's a good thing that they migrate, because on night 14, Jeff and Patrick are attacked by baboons. And apparently, Jeff and Patrick's camp area had baboons in it, but they were run off at the beginning of the challenge. But then after a while, the baboons have had enough. And so they decided they wanted their territory back and were doing a dominance display. Maybe not dominance display, but basically threw their waste at Jeff and Patrick. Jeff was the most vocal about it, and it seemed Jeff was the only one having waste thrown at him, and Patrick didn't have any, but I don't know. It seems they both were getting waste on them all over the place. The safety team is radioed in, and Jeff and Patrick have to move. Gary and Danny's camp was probably the closest by, so the safety team escorted Patrick and Jeff over to Danny and Gary's camp. They are able to hide the honey and everything is fine, except not really, because Jeff had some food he was going to take with him on the migration, but it was all ruined. And luckily, the baboons will get their territory back and the migration happens. And also throughout the episode, we see Boulen's energy sort of dropping. He was upset that the fish that Dan, Trish, and Fernando had given them was returned, and his energy wasn't at its normal level. He didn't seem like himself, and he was having difficulty in the harsh conditions, and so that was very sad to see. And the migration hike took a lot out of him. Unfortunately, there was no real time to rest because the final 10 got their elimination challenge. That's right, it was an elimination challenge. But before that, everyone had to give up cached and one items. So the 4 bows, the 2 fishing assets, the hide, and the Pulaski were all given up. And the way that the individuals got them back was in order of placement. They got to choose from the pile of stuff what they wanted to get. It was first come, first serve. And then they would get a scroll that told them which camp they were going to be in. And so for the elimination challenge, they had to go make a 4-pronged spear. They had to fire harden it, and then they had to go into a small catfish pool, take out a catfish, and spear it with their catfish spear. Not really catfish spear, but the 4-pronged spear. That's what they needed to do. So they need to do that, and they're off to do the thing. And Darren shows off his skills yet again. Darren has been doing really well in the survival skills competitions. He was the first person to get his Pulaski knife in the first elimination challenge. Although he didn't finish first, he was really close. He helped his team get second place with his axe in the tree chopping challenge. He got first place in the spear making challenge. So he's doing really well, and he knows his stuff. Fernando comes in second. Fernando is a very altruistic person, very kind, very caring. He's someone you definitely want to have on your team. Even though it is a competition, he still keeps it light, keeps it fun. But he's not like, oh, I'll give up my spot for you. No, he's like, okay, gotta do this. Everything will be great. You're great. Fernando's great. Dan gets third. Patrick gets fourth. Jeff gets fifth. Kai gets sixth. Gary gets seventh. Trish gets eighth. But then there is trouble that happens where Bulent unfortunately gets super dehydrated to the point where they have to call in an ambulance for him. And Bulent is unfortunately med tapped from the challenge and is the 10th place finisher of the challenge. And even though Danny did not complete the challenge, she was able to continue in the competition and basically be safe from elimination. And unfortunately, Danny's been having a lot of trouble during this challenge because in the first elimination challenge, she was about a minute away from being eliminated because Lacey was right behind her. Her team placed third in the bird trap challenge where they got the ostrich eggs. Her team got last in the tree chopping challenge, and she almost got eliminated in the elimination challenge. And if Bulent hadn't have been med-tapped, she might have been going home. Now we move on to everyone picking which items they wanted from the cached and one items that they had to give up. And, I forgot to mention that during migration, Dan wanted to carry a lot of the items, and Trish took that as him wanting to hoard everything because they were thinking that, teams were going to get shaken up, and so they had to split assets. And she was saying Dan is greedy, even though he was just like, I'm just going to carry it. And there was also a point where Trish wanted to do something, but Dan wanted to practice using the bow with 2 fingers after he cut one of his fingers with the Pulaski last episode. And so he wanted to practice that, and Trish calls him stubborn. And it's very interesting because we don't really hear Dan talking much about Trish until around the end, or I might have forgotten, where he says the 2 people he trusted the least were Jeff and Trish, mainly because he saw Jeff's attitude during Last One Standing Season 1. And Dan was with Trish and Fernando for 15 days, so he kind of knows her strategy. So maybe he's thinking she might do something underhanded, so you just never know. And so with the order in which people chose stuff was the order they finished in the challenge. Darren picked the fishing asset. Jeff, Dan, Patrick, and Fernando got the bows. Kai got the other fishing asset. Gary got his Pulaski because Gary mentioned during the tree cutting challenge where first place got a Pulaski, he was talking about how that's his item of choice because we have seen him use it in the past. So he's finally gotten it, so that's good. Trish gets the hide. Unfortunately, Danny gets nothing because she technically finished last in the challenge. And also we have the new groups, which are Kai, Patrick, and Darren, Fernando, Gary and Danny, and finally Jeff, Dan, and Trish. Who could have seen this coming? The three rivals are all mixed together in the same group, so we'll see what happens there. And with that, that is the end of the recap. We have 9 individuals remaining. I'm worried about Danny, but as I said before, she makes it to the nighttime elimination challenge, so she makes it through at least one of the next elimination challenges. Darren accidentally injured himself when he was searching for a catfish in the catfish pond. He hurt a very sensitive part of his body, and that's all I say about that. I'm rooting for my 4 faves, who I'm not going to tell you. And I think that Jeff and Patrick are actually buddies. And with that, that's the end of the recap. Thank you all so much for listening. I hope you all have a wonderful day/night. Please like, comment nice things, and subscribe. Please click the next video if it's mine. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. Okay, bye-bye now. Bye-bye.